Calvin Castine on the 4th of July, 2020. Judy Castine's on the camera. We're here at what I think is, what's it called? Veterans Park? What's this called?
Veterans Memorial Park.
Veterans Memorial Park, on the old oval here in the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And we've been talking to somebody that I think I started talking to back in 1997. What's your name?
Craig Russell, and 97, Kent the Lord House. Yes, we started the trend.
That's right. Before the Battle of Plattsburgh Parade got going, the year before that, there was stuff going on, and Gordy and I were there. And
oh yeah, I actually had the opportunity to watch that lately.
Did you?
Linda Ward had it, and it brings back memories. My hair was a different color. It was a little bit darker.
But the hat's the same color.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So what are we doing here today, Craig?
We are commemorating the reading of the Declaration of Independence. It's July 4th. I'm president of Valcour Battle Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution. And we had decided that given the lack of a lot of traditional 4th of July activities and the fact that our social interaction had expanded to the point where we could have some sort of a commemoration ceremony that was outdoors, that we would do a reading of the Declaration of Independence. So we scrambled. It's only been 4 weeks. We got a hold of the mayor's office, got the appropriate health department direction, both countywide and statewide. Then I went and got myself John Kruger, who's going to read the Declaration of Independence today.
Good choice.
Very good. He was, again, we haven't had much time to put this together, and he had altered his schedule for the weekend. He was going to do some traveling, which he is still going to do, but he was good enough saying, "This is what I do," and it didn't take him long to decide, I can do this for you. So I'm looking forward to that today.
Yeah, it's a perfect day. Temperature in the low 80s. It's a gorgeous day.
It's
a lot
great.
of sunshine. I was just mentioning to Judy on our way down here that normally we'd be rushing to Plattsburgh. We cover the Alberg Parade, which is at 11 o'clock every 4th of July, except this year, of course, and come here for the Plattsburgh Parade. In other years, I've gone to Westport and Willsboro. They've had 250th celebrations and 200th celebrations and so on. And 4th of July is usually a whole
Busy.
lot of stuff going on.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy for the more or less leisure. Putting on this commemoration ceremony isn't really all that. I haven't felt any pressure to do it and so forth. And quite frankly, we didn't know or don't know what to expect for people to participate. I see that we have several right now, which is what I expected. We plan on doing this in the future, all the way up to 2026, which it will commemorate the Battle of Valcour.
So you're planning on being around for another 6 years at least.
At least. Whether I'm as mobile as I am even today, I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, none of us are getting any younger, are we?
And I look back, it seemed like, maybe half a dozen years ago and beyond that, every weekend there was some kind of reenacting going on, and the reenactors aren't as active as they once were, are they?
No, there's a reason for that, and it's age. Most of the reenactors that are out there are not the younger ones. There's not too many that are getting involved. And as time goes on, we're finding more reenactments in September and October, less through July and August, especially August. You don't see as many because the organizers themselves are getting older and saying we can't handle this, so they wait for the end of the summer when it gets cooler. You also have to consider also that back in the military days, most of what they had done in the 18th century never really kicked off until the end of the summer, in which case they were into a time crunch to get what they had accomplished before the snow set in
Right.
which case they can't do anything.
Right.
So they didn't have a long time to
Very
do
short
this.
window.
And it was also the springtime. It seemed like, look at the Battle of Lexington, Concord, and so forth. Happens in April. Everything's thawed out, and it's still, even in June when they did Bunker Hill, there's less heat and so forth. So a lot of what they had done was seasonal.
Well,
A lot of it.
yeah. Well, I think if you had local militia involved, they had probably some business to take care of at home during the summer. You know?
They did. In fact, I just came across some information on the French and Indian War. Actually, French and Indian War. It was actually 1777. General Gates, which is Revolutionary War, takes command of the American Army pretty much late in the end of the summer from Philip Schuyler, and he was cognizant of the fact that in order to keep the morale up with the men and militia that he managed to acquire, he would take them and rotate them. You go home, take care of your fields. Then you come back, and then I'll send more out.
Uh-huh.
These militiamen knew that they could take care of their business at home, and at the same time be able to come back and contribute to the war effort. So they actually had some consideration about that. Never really looked at it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 1777. That was after the French and Indian War,
Well,
but
I
it
had
was,
said I kind of said French and Indian War. Same thing actually wound up happening, but
yeah.
in particular I thought of Horatio
77,
Gates
yeah.
in '77.
Yeah.
Just did that reading.
All right. So we were here, a very
Yes.
well-respected place here. Hopefully, everybody who shows up today, there's people that are here to respect what's going on.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Because that's been one of the things we have to be careful about, to stay low key in this kind of stuff. It's ironic, you know, that we want to celebrate what these people did, and you know.
It was a different time, different values.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to say a prelude to the Declaration reading, which I'm going to bring up some of that.
Uh-huh.
Some of the social aspects that are controversial even today.
Yeah.
And they weren't any less controversial back then.
Yeah. And you know, I said a few weeks back, before it happened, I said probably the only person that could pass the test now would be Jesus Christ, and then I find out some people aren't happy with him either. So
Yeah.
you know, there's statues of him. So I don't think any of us could pass the test to ever
No,
meet the standards.
I honestly can't believe that we're in this type of situation where we have to reassess history. If you're going to erase it, you're going to repeat it. You're going to
That's right.
repeat the bad things just as much as the good things. You have to learn from this.
That's right. You learn from your history.
You learn from your history, and you know certain statues meant something in a different era, and now you want to erase the way those people felt, so that you're correct. Where does it stop?
Yeah. There's nobody that.
Now, do we get to the point where you can't live in these buildings because they represented war, and war is not good?
I don't know.
You know, and you know, you shouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No. But. So hopefully today will be a very positive note, and I applaud you and the people that you have working with you to putting this on, Craig.
Well, thank you. And I see our reader has
reader is
arrived.
here?
I think so.
Dr. Kruger has arrived. All right.
Well, he just passed. I thought that was him.
Well,
I'm
maybe it
hoping
is.
he's not here yet.
Okay.
All
Anything
right.
else, Craig?
No, I'm
All right.
fine.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a look at the park. Here's Dr. Kruger here coming down. Looks like him. It's right in the point of the oval here. It's easy to access. I'm doing something. Are you? You want to chat a minute? You want to chat a moment, sir?
Sure, I'd love to.
All right. John Kruger, how are you?
Okay, I mean, under the circumstances, I mean, there's some people here. We're in an historic spot. It's shady. We've got a breeze.
And,
Life is good.
turn around. I see you haven't visited a barber in a while here.
I've just so I have, you know, some authenticity for speaking occasions like this one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's part of my persona.
Okay, plus all the money you've saved.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, Craig said it wasn't very hard to talk you into coming here and reading this.
If other people had asked me, I probably would have found a graceful way to get out of it. With Craig, there was no way to avoid it.
You're
And
not that
I'm
graceful.
hoping, you know, people will show up. There aren't that many other things going on. And you can't have a more historic, well, I don't have to sell you on. I was so glad when you were elected to the county legislature,
thank
so
you.
there's a voice for history there.
Well, thank you. Yes, yes, it's just an amazing spot right here. And as I was talking with Craig, unfortunately we have to be careful when we talk about history right now, because
I know
it's a matter of who wants to interpret it for us. And you know, so when I heard this was going on, I said, yeah, I want to be there.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. So what's keeping you busy these days?
I lived down in Port Kent in an 1825 house with my long-standing girlfriend and my 3-year-old Australian Shepherd, and you know, I do a lot of grooming that goes along with an 1825 house.
Okay.
And I'm on the steering committee of the Lake Champlain Basin program. Although we haven't met face to face in a long time, at least that gives me something to do that helps the greater community.
Yes, yeah, something positive to
Yeah,
keep you busy.
you know I'd like to be a history advocate.
Oh,
so.
definitely. But this is, you know, and this is they've really developed this little park into a very fitting place to be, I think, and it's very fitting today on the 4th of July to be here.
This is totally off the track, and I know it's going to mess up your show completely.
Okay,
But
set up.
the Graves Mansion down in All Sable Forks, when you and Gordy's predecessor did that long tour,
Bob, yeah.
20 years ago, something like that.
Over 20, because
Yeah.
Bob died in '97.
Okay, a long time ago. I've been fascinated with that place ever since. Have you been by it recently?
No, I've seen the posts on Facebook and so on.
Yeah, I mean, you can pick it up for like $55,000 now. It's all boarded up. You can't go inside it. I mean, even if I had $55,000 and $1 million to repair it, without being you can't see the inside at all.
You can't evaluate what it looks like inside. Huh.
And
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, that's another. Sable Forks has got, well, doesn't rival the old base, but it's got an incredibly rich industrial history.
Definitely. I was so glad we were able to do that, because it.
And Henry Graves grew up here in Plattsburgh. So, you know, there's a local boy who goes there and seemingly does really well, and in fact embezzles his father-in-law. I'm sorry I got off on that, but you're one of the few people I can talk to about that, Calvin.
Well, the post, you know, the video is online, as you know, and it's gotten several thousand views in the last month and a half.
Has
or
it
2
really?
Months, yes.
Oh.
But somebody did mention it says he didn't embezzle anybody, so allegedly, we'll say allegedly, okay?
All right, but I would defer to Sharon Hewson on that. She's my resident Sable Forks authority.
Okay, views expressed are those of John Kruger.
Yes, exactly. Any disclaimer you want, you've got it, my friend. I just have to check in. I'm sorry I interrupted your...
Well, that's all right. You never interrupt,
See you
John.
later,
Good seeing you. All right, Dr. John Kruger. And we're going to just, when we do the honor flight send-offs, this is where we usually are, unless weather keeps us indoors. When they had the closing ceremonies for Plattsburgh Air Force Base, this is where we were. This little park here wasn't anywhere in anybody's thoughts at the time. But all these bricks have a name on them, of a veteran that people have bought in memory of a family member. And it's just a very honorable place to be, and a great place to set up for today. And our little monuments in and around the area. Of course, the history of Plattsburgh Air Force Base goes beyond Air Force history, right back to those wars that John Kruger was talking about. So it's been here for a long time. There's little placards in the middle for the POWs, MIAs, and there's benches set up. Veterans of Foreign Wars, North Country Veterans Association to my left, and here we got in honor of Paul Dumas. So many times Paul Dumas greeted us as we arrived here for different events. This is donated by J. Heald. This is donated in memory of Master Sergeant James Halpin Sr. by Thomas Halpin. Plattsburgh Barracks Veterans Park, dedicated to all veterans who served this great nation in their time of need, from the battles of the Revolution through the present. And the big stone was donated by Graymont Materials. And as we said, there are names here on every one of these bricks. I'm not sure if they've all been bought out, if there's any room, but you come here, if you know an older veteran, you just might find their name here. All right, a small gathering, but a respectful
Good afternoon,
gathering.
everyone.
Let's listen to
It's about 1 o'clock,
Red Collins.
and we're set to start our program. Before we begin, I'd like to just mention a couple of things here. We are the Battle of Valcour Chapter Sons of the American Revolution, also known as the SAR, and we thank everyone for attending today. It's been kind of a short notice that we've been able to pull this together, but we're happy to see the crowd that we've got, and we want to thank a number of attendees who are here from various organizations as well as the general public. We have representatives from the Disabled American Veterans. Thank you very much for coming. From the Vietnam vets, we appreciate you being here as well. And we also have SAR members. Charlie Mitchell is one of our members. He's part of the Color Guard. Josh Wingler is an SAR member. We thank them for being here. And we have our major speaker, John Kruger. Thank you very much, John. And we also appreciate all of the people from the general public who attended as well. We also want to thank the media who supported us and helped us get the word out. Calvin Castine is going to be recording the ceremony, and we thank Calvin for being here. We have photographer Bonnie Wingler. Thank you very much, Bonnie, for helping us out. And we want to thank Wiry and also WPTZ as well for advertising our event. We want to welcome everyone to today's event, and we hope that this will become a yearly event. Maybe in the future we can incorporate this as part of the celebration in Plattsburgh. At this time, I'd like to call on our chapter chaplain, Stan Ransom, to give us the invocation, please.
As you can see, the speakers are in the shade and there's sunlight behind them, so we have to battle that.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, as we gather here today on the 4th of July, let us remember all of those who came before us, who with their sacrifices and their fighting ability were enabled us to get our freedom from Britain and to enjoy a long and happy episode of American liberty. We thank you and bless all of the ideas that come from our Constitution, and thank you for this day. Amen.
Thank you very much, Stan. You might be wondering who the Sons of the American Revolution are. As MC, I feel I have a little bit of leeway in describing for you who the Sons of the Revolution of the American Revolution are, and I'd like to do it by means of a story. In 1776, there was a 16-year-old lad named Johnson who lived in New Boston. He enlisted in the 1st New Hampshire Regiment and fought for independence. Throughout the war, he saw action along with his comrades at Ticonderoga, Saratoga, and he was with Washington's army at Valley Forge. When Johnson returned home, his family noted, "We did not recognize him. He had changed so much." Now, you may think Johnson was this soldier's last name. However, his full name is Johnson Smith, and he is my great-great-great-grandfather. And all of the SAR members present have a story that is similar to mine, and they can trace their lineage back to a patriot who fought for freedom. At this time, I'd like to turn the program over to our president, Craig Russell, who has a few remarks about the Declaration of Independence. Craig?
Picture this, a group of politicians from 13 American colonies come together at Independence Hall in Philadelphia to plot what turns out to be a revolution. A contentious Continental Congress needs to put forth some convincing reasons for declaring war. Congress turns to 33-year-old aristocrat Thomas Jefferson, and in a matter of days, the red-headed wonder writes the most celebrated manifesto for human freedom and self-government in the history of Western civilization. The Continental Congress authorizes Philadelphia printer John Dunlop to print 200 broadsides, poster-sized sheets. The document, unsigned, is then rushed to a waiting horsemen who put them in their saddlebags, and off they go galloping throughout the colonies. You see, if this Revolutionary War is to be won, thousands of farmers and tradesmen must be persuaded to take up arms and fight. And they do. Not many people realize it today, but scholars believe Jefferson intended for the Declaration of Independence to be performed, not just read. Its words and rhythms were written to be spoken in proud, defiant tones, in grand places. Jefferson was not ignorant to the problem of slavery. He called it a moral and political depravity, and in the original draft of the Declaration, denounced the slave trade as a cruel war against human nature itself. But Congress did not approve inclusion of Jefferson's statement on the issue of slavery. In fact, there is no mention of slavery, black people, or women, for that matter, in this preeminent statement of the equal rights of man. So it makes you wonder, how can a man who himself held slaves write such a passion and eloquence about human liberation and the promise of a democratic republic? Why, you might ask, do I bring up such embarrassing truths on this glorious occasion? In answer, the real glory of the Declaration of Independence has been our nation's epic struggle throughout our history to close the gap between the ideals of this remarkable document and the sometimes painful realities of American life. The Declaration symbolizes the birth of our nation, of course, but also the constant struggles to achieve its ideals. Consider the words of this document inspired the French Revolution in 1789, and 200 years later, the revolt of Chinese students in Tiananmen Square. It inspired Abe Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, Martin Luther King to fight for civil rights, and the women suffragettes to fight for the vote. This business of fulfilling the Declaration of Independence is a difficult struggle. Jefferson called it an expression of the American mind. It is why this nation is so great and why I am so proud to be an American citizen. Here now are those sentiments as first expressed in 1776. John?
You telling people that it was meant to be performed doesn't take it. Never mind.
You are a performer.
Puts the pressure on there.
Thank you, Calvin. That's what I was looking for. Action of the Second Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while the evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation, till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept amongst us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond the seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for a redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, they too have been deaf to the voice of justice. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our attentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson justified the abstract right of revolution and described the theory on which the Americans were basing their new government. Revolution, of course, was not a new thing, but the spectacle of a people explaining and justifying their right to throw off their oppressors and establish a new government on their own authority was without precedent. The Declaration of Independence cleared the way for tackling the challenges of founding a new nation and maintaining it in defiance of Great Britain, the greatest power in the late 18th century world. The American Revolution was successfully concluded. The American War for Independence was underway. Those are Jefferson's words. I take no credit whatsoever.
Thank you very much, John. That was a very inspiring and powerful reading of the Declaration. At this time, I would ask everyone to please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now have the playing of the National Anthem, and that will be followed by a cannon salute.
short wick.
Good job, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. Before we close our ceremony today, I was remiss in not recognizing all of the organizations who are here. We also have a member from the Clinton County Historical Association. Thank you very much for coming as well.
Thank you.
I now call on our chaplain, Stan, to give us a closing benediction, please.
And now, may the Father of all of us go with you and keep you safe as you go to your homes, and let us remember this day. Amen.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming. We have a table over on the side here. If you would like to pick up a copy of the Constitution, you're welcome to. And we also have some American flags that you're welcome to help yourself to as well. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for doing that.
I have a good memory, but it's very short. So when you started talking Bud, I said Bud Collins. Remember Bud Collins? He was
I
an
don't.
Old,
No.
He was an old MC many years ago.
Okay, all right,
But
cool.
it's Bud Smith.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yep.
And Craig said in many ways this was your idea, right?
Well,
And
if
he jumped on the bandwagon.
if I can brag a little bit, my wife has been trying to get the mayor of Plattsburgh to read the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July from City Hall steps for probably 10 or 15 years. And it hasn't happened.
no matter which
and
mayor
so-
it was, it's not just the current one. it's previous
Exactly
mayor.
right. Exactly right. I think it went back actually to Mayor Stewart.
Okay.
Is where it was.
Well, it's gotta be 10, 15 years.
It's got to be, yeah. So when we had our Zoom meeting a few weeks ago and we were looking to do something, I said, well, my wife Nancy has this idea, Craig, if you're interested. And we thought it was something that we could do within a couple of weeks, and so we went with it, and this is the result.
All right. And
Yep.
it's the first of many to come, right?
We hope so, yeah. In the future, we're hoping that when things open up after the COVID, that there'll probably be a parade in Plattsburgh, and
Again?
maybe this ceremony can be incorporated as part of that.
It certainly
Yeah.
can, even before the parade, while they're waiting, everybody lining up, or after the parade, or whatever.
Sure.
Because
Yep.
after the parade, they usually get some bands going through, so it may be tough to fit it in after.
Exactly right. Yep. So we were pleased with the turnout today. We had, I think, roughly 30 people altogether, and most of them said that they heard about it on Wiry, which was very, very nice of them to publicize it for it. And
Thank Dave Andrews for that.
we do, and we thank Hometown Cable for being here also. Thank you very
Once
much.
I heard about it, and I didn't have anything conflicting that tore me away from here, so I wanted to make sure to come here.
That's great.
Now, I think most of us are probably more familiar with the DAR as
Yeah.
opposed to the SAR. How long has the SAR been around? Sons of the Revolution.
Well, I think the original chapter started maybe in the 1930s, something like that. I think the DAR started in the late 1800s. But our battle chapter has been in existence, I want to say, for maybe 10 years. A local history buff is the one who started it, and we are, for the most part, we had a lot of members that were out of town, but recently we've been able to pull in some local people as well. In fact, perhaps you might want to be a member also.
I don't know if I can trace my ancestry back to the. I can trace them up north to Samuel D. Champlain, Mr. Hebert. That was one of his cohorts there when he came through.
Okay,
But,
okay, nothing in the Revolution.
French Canadian, no offense.
Yes,
The Trudeau
yeah.
and the Castines, we weren't fighting in the American Revolution, and not even the Civil War.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. But
My first
yeah,
relative came through, settled here in the 1860s. And,
I
yeah.
see. Okay. Yeah. Very, very nice. Yeah. So our membership has grown quite a lot in the past few years. Our registrar is helping people out with their genealogies and submitting the applications, and it's quite a lengthy process.
Well, do you have to verify? You got to prove that you're an actual son?
Yes, you do, and it has to be what they call primary source material that you use. You can't just say, well, I remember my great-grandmother telling me that her grandfather was in the Revolution. You have to have documentation for it. So you can look at muster rolls, You can look at pension records. You can look at discharge papers. Lots of different avenues that you can use to support your case.
So if you've got that history that you think is there, you guys can help track down to make sure they are eligible.
We'd be happy to, and then it's up to you whether you wish to join or not.
Okay,
Yep.
how far-ranging is your chapter?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. We have some members that are what we call dual members. We have one member that is a member of our chapter, Valcour Battle Chapter, as well as the Saratoga Battlefield Chapter. We have members. I was secretary for a while, and I think our farthest member was in maybe North Carolina. So we have a lot of members that are a part of our group, but they're unable to attend our meetings and participate in these events. Yep.
Okay, so is there a place they can reach the SAR?
If you want to, well, you can contact me if you would like, and I'll put you in touch with the people that would direct you. My email address, can I give it out?
Yes.
It is CHEMAN207@yahoo.com. And if they contact me and express an interest, we'll get in touch with them and go from there.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. And do you work closely with the DAR at all, or are you bitter enemies?
No, no, we're not bitter enemies. We try to coordinate our events as much as we can. I'm not sure we had anybody from the DAR here today, but the DAR has a yearly wreath-laying ceremony in St. John, Richelieu.
I've been there one time.
And so we participate in that as well, and we know the members of the DAR, and so we try to keep in touch, and every once in a while we'll have a luncheon or a get-together just to compare notes. Yep.
Yeah, that was a long trip up there. You know, not that St. John's is that far away, but
yeah.
We followed all those little areas where the rapids are, and it's
Yes.
amazing that they were able to come through some of those rapids.
When you go back and you look at what those patriots endured, it's just phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to read a book about Arnold's trek, Benedict Arnold's trek through Maine up to fight in Quebec, it's just amazing what those soldiers endured on those trips, going through the swamps and sleeping in trees and wet feet and bloody feet and no shoes. It's just heart-wrenching, some of the stories.
In June of 1860, the Rogers Rangers were in Point of Fair next to Rouse's Point, and there was a battle there in June of 1860. In 2010, we had a 250th anniversary celebration of that,
Okay.
or commemoration.
Okay.
I guess you don't
Yeah.
celebrate battles, but
Yes, commemoration.
but that's all swamped through there, and you got a good idea of what they went through.
Oh yeah. It's treacherous, and you think that I think Arnold actually started trekking through Maine in November, and so I think they were up there fighting in the snow, and if I remember correctly, they were traveling also in the snow, and so you add that on top of all the other privations that they went through, it just had to be horrible.
Well, you're smart enough to do his battle at Point of Fair in June. So.
Good point. Yes, very good point, Calvin. Yeah.
Okay, Bud Smith. And
Yes.
everybody heard me call him Collins earlier. Disregard that.
Okay.
Smith.
That's all right. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for covering our event.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're
Bud.
welcome.
All
Bye-bye.
right, thank you. So that'll wrap it up. Our look at this year's first ever and first of many to come, we hope, reading of the Declaration of Independence at this very hallowed location here at the old Plattsburgh Air Force Base Oval on the old base. Thanks for watching and supporting viewer-supported local television hometown cable TV we think is worthy of your support. And our thanks for the people involved for keeping us in the loop so that we were able to be here and cover this important event.